Is it still true that you're never going to get married?
I never said that.
Nicknamed the European Muse of Hollywood, Jacqueline Bisset once stirred hearts around the world with her role as Julie Baker in Day for Night, a cinematic masterpiece that earned an Academy Award. The film not only catapulted her to the peak of artistic acclaim, but also established her as a timeless symbol of intellectual beauty, graceful elegance, and captivating mystique throughout the 1970s. She was a muse to Truffaut, Polanski, and Coppola, a luminous star in Hollywood's golden era. But behind the dazzling spotlight was a silence too deep to name. Radiant on the silver screen, yet her heart never found a place to rest. Was it a proud choice, or a quiet loneliness the world never truly understood? For nearly 60 years, Jacqueline Bisset walked her path alone, giving up what many could never let go of. And now, at 80, what is it that brings a lump to the throat of those who look back at the journey of a woman so beautiful, so talented, and so achingly alone? Today, Celebrities Rewind invites you to step away from the shimmering lights of the red carpet, to finally confront the unspoken truth behind a beauty that once seemed flawless. Are you ready to listen? Jacqueline Bisset's childhood did not begin in the glow of limelight or applause. It was stitched together in shades of silence and gloom, days where a little girl had to learn to grow up quietly, amidst unspoken ruptures. Born in 1944, in the midst of a world still ablaze with war, Jacqueline was raised in what seemed like an ideal family. Her father was a renowned Scottish doctor, and her mother, Arlette, was a sophisticated and intelligent French lawyer. But behind the closed doors, a crack had begun to form, one that deepened with time, and one that even she would never be able to mend. Tragedy struck when Jacqueline was too young to understand it all. Her mother, once radiant and full of life like springtime, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a disease that silently drained her vitality, her ability to walk, and her dreams. But the heartbreak for Jacqueline was not only the cruelty of illness, it was her father's decision to leave. He left everything behind. He left a wife slowly withering away. He left 2 children, Jacqueline among them, who were not yet old enough to grasp the weight of loneliness, but who would come to carry it for a lifetime. Even as she suffered, her mother preserved a quiet pride for Jacqueline. She never taught her daughter how to complain, only how to rise in silence. And that silence consumed Jacqueline's childhood. She did not cry in front of anyone. She only watched her mother fade slowly on the sickbed as her own childhood slipped away like winter leaves. No one came to save them. No one stayed. She learned early that love is fragile and that people can leave, even when you need them the most. In that darkness, only books, classic novels, sorrowful French music, and a few quiet afternoons beside her mother remained as her small refuge. On certain days, Jacqueline would read aloud to her mother, as if every word was a thread tying their weary souls together. In those moments, she felt unafraid. They were rare glimpses of peace, where a child could simply be a child, not a caretaker, not a grown-up by necessity. I never forgot those days sitting beside my mother, not knowing if we'd still have tomorrow together. From a very young age, Jacqueline became the emotional backbone of the family. To support her mother, she started modeling when she was still very young. A few years later, she entered the world of fashion, a world that celebrated beauty but also made her feel like a product on display. The flash of cameras was relentless, but each click felt like a disappearance. The world saw only her face. No one saw the eyes that had known pain. She was beautiful, but that beauty was not a gift. It was a mask that others put on her, one she never asked to wear. She had once loved ballet. To her, every movement was not just art, it was breath. It was a space where she could truly exist. But ballet required money, and her family had none. Even more cruelly, her tall frame, so praised on fashion runways, became an obstacle on the ballet stage. Too tall, too full, just a few words, enough to shatter a dream. But Jacqueline did not collapse. She turned to acting, bringing with her all the pain that had never been named, carrying the hunger to be heard. Not for her beauty, but for something deeper. The voice of a soul that had suffered, but had never stopped fighting. Behind every role she played was not just technique, but years of silent sobs buried deep within. She never forgot those days sitting beside her mother, uncertain if tomorrow would be theirs. She never forgot what it felt like to be abandoned. She never forgot that first rejection, the first indifferent glance, the first slammed door, and the cold that entered her heart afterward. Jacqueline Bisset stepped into life not with proud footsteps, but with bare, bloodied feet, still walking forward because there was no path left to turn back. And that is what made her extraordinary. For those childhood wounds, silent but searing, became what allowed her not just to perform, but to live inside every character. And that thorn-strewn road would eventually lead her to cinema, a place where pain could be heard and silence could finally be seen. Before the camera ever found her, before the scripts and the red carpets, Jacqueline Bisset's life had already been shaped by quiet sorrow and strength forged in silence. Emerging from a childhood defined by abandonment, illness, and the lonely ache of watching her mother fade away, Jacqueline stepped into the adult world with more than just a burdened heart. She stepped in with purpose. To support her mother, she took on modeling jobs, quickly learning how the world measured women in glances, not in depth. Yet, beneath the surface glamour, she nursed a deeper calling. Refusing to let appearances define her destiny, Jacqueline enrolled at the Italia Conti Academy of Theatre Arts in London, committing herself to the rigorous discipline of acting. It was there she began to understand the difference between being watched and being heard. Her screen debut came in 1965 with a minor role in The Knack and How to Get It, a fleeting part that barely hinted at the well of talent she carried inside. That same year, she also appeared in Roman Polanski's Cul-de-sac, 1966, a darkly comic psychological drama that gave her one of her earliest chances to work with a visionary director and showcase a deeper dramatic presence. Fleeting part that barely hinted at the well of talent she carried inside. But even then, her gaze on screen held something quiet and stirring. The industry hadn't noticed it yet, but it was there. It was from this place, not of innocence, but of resilience, that she entered the world of cinema. Hollywood did not greet Jacqueline Bisset with reverence for her training or recognition of her emotional depth. Instead, it saw a face, a figure, a projection. Her breakout in the James Bond parody Casino Royale, 1967, as Miss Goodthighs, wasn't the celebration of craft she had hoped for. It was a performance asked of her body, not her soul. It was flattering in the most dehumanizing way. Jacqueline wasn't being cast for her essence, but for how she fit the fantasy of a male-dominated industry. The pain of that realization wasn't loud, but it was lasting. A quiet shift began when she appeared in Two for the Road opposite Audrey Hepburn. It was a role that finally allowed her to be seen not just as a beauty, but as an actress with emotional texture. Soon after, in The Detective, 1968, with Frank Sinatra, Jacqueline was dubbed the Kid by Sinatra himself, who unexpectedly defended her instincts on set. It was one of the first times her talent, not just her face, earned protection. Yet Hollywood continued to reduce her worth to surface impressions. Bullet, 1968, alongside Steve McQueen, further proved her mettle. Her performance was understated but compelling, though once again, headlines focused more on her looks than her layered portrayal. Then came a betrayal disguised as success. The Deep, 1977. Tricked into wearing a semi-transparent white t-shirt underwater, Jacqueline's image was splashed across movie posters and pop culture without her consent. "That t-shirt made me a millionaire," the producer later bragged. Never mind what it cost her. That image nearly erased a decade of work. Her body had been used again as a product, a billboard. It was nothing short of cruel. But Jacqueline didn't retreat. She recalibrated. In Rich and Famous, 1981, she poured herself into a role that required no artifice, no allure, just truth. It was her silent triumph. Critics, at last, called her what she had always been, a serious actress. And later, in Napoleon and Josephine, her performance as Josephine earned her a Golden Globe nomination, honoring not only her talent, but her tenacity. Her collaborations with directors like François Truffaut, Roman Polanski, John Huston, and George Cukor weren't accidents. They were acknowledgments. Among these, her portrayal of Julie Baker in Truffaut's 1973 masterpiece, Day for Night, La Nuit Américaine, stands as one of her brightest artistic milestones. The film went on to win the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film, and Jacqueline's role, subtle, complex, and intensely human, helped cement her legacy in European cinema. It was a role less about words and more about presence, capturing the quiet storms that brew behind an actress's eyes. Bisset once reflected on the experience. "Working with Truffaut made me feel seen, as a woman and as an artist." And she didn't stop there. In the decades that followed, Jacqueline Bisset continued to defy expectations. In 1983, she starred in Class, taking on the daring role of a seductive older woman, further demonstrating her willingness to challenge norms. By 1989, in Scenes from the Class Struggle in Beverly Hills, she offered a satirical lens on high society, reinforcing her range and fearlessness. Her performance in the Emmy-nominated miniseries Joan of Arc, 1999, where she played Isabelle d'Arc, mother of the French heroine, revealed a matured sensitivity and emotional depth. These works fortified her reputation not just as a striking screen presence, but as a woman who lived her roles with fearless complexity. In 1984's Under the Volcano, she delivered a haunting performance under the direction of John Huston. She appeared in Dangerous Beauty, 1996, portraying complex, historical women with grace. In 2013, her role in the TV miniseries Dancing on the Edge won her the Golden Globe Award for Best Supporting Actress, her first win after several career nominations, including an earlier Golden Globe nod for Who is Killing the Great Chefs of Europe, and an Emmy nomination for Joan of Arc, 1999, for Best Supporting Actress, finally cementing her legacy with the golden recognition she had long deserved. Remarkably, at the age of 78, she starred in Lauren and Rose, 2022, portraying an aging actress navigating legacy, connection, and self-worth. Her portrayal was lauded for its tenderness and emotional honesty. And even as she nears 80, Jacqueline shows no signs of retreat. Her recent resurgence includes roles in Birds of Paradise, 2021, and The Listener, 2024, both highlighting her continued presence and relevance in contemporary cinema. She returns in 2025 with 2 new projects: Long Shadows, her first Western film in over 5 decades, and Shelter Me, a pandemic-era drama reuniting her with former co-star Nick Nolte. These roles prove what her life has always whispered, that artistry endures when it's rooted in truth. Jacqueline Bisset's career wasn't a path paved in ease. It was earned with dignity, sorrow, and a refusal to be reduced. And in that survival, there is triumph. Quiet, undeniable, everlasting. Beneath the dazzling glow of cinema, as Jacqueline Bisset captivated millions with her timeless beauty and extraordinary talent, few could have imagined the personal journey hidden behind those glittering frames. A journey marked by aching loneliness and invisible wounds that never truly healed. While her career soared to breathtaking heights, her love, her losses, and her deepest longings remained buried in silence. It was there, away from the applause and the spotlight, where a quietly tragic story unfolded. A tale of profound solitude and heartbreaking choices that shaped the real Jacqueline Bisset. A proud woman carrying within her the scars of a lifetime. And perhaps it all began with her first love, the deepest, the longest, and the one that left her heart quietly aching ever since. That man was Canadian actor Michael Sarrazin. They spent 6 years together, 6 years of shared laughter, tender dreams, and quiet moments that felt like they might stretch into eternity. Their love was not loud, not theatrical. It was gentle and grounding, like a calm harbor in the midst of a turbulent world. But then came the moment that could have changed everything. Sarrazin asked her to marry him, a gesture symbolizing a future built together. And Jacqueline said no, not because she did not love him. In truth, she may have loved him more than she could bear to admit. But the echoes of her past spoke louder than the promise of tomorrow. She had seen her mother's spirit slowly wilt under the weight of marriage, and she had lived the pain of watching her father leave without ever turning back. To Jacqueline, marriage did not mean security, it meant surrender. And for a woman who had spent her life building walls to protect the fragile girl within, surrender felt like a kind of death. So they drifted apart, not out of anger or betrayal, but from the silent heartbreak of a love that simply could not silence the wounds of the past. What remained were memories, late-night conversations, peaceful silences, and a dream of what could have been, tender, beautiful, and forever unfinished. Then came François Truffaut, the brilliant French director who once called her a wild spirit that no one could ever own. With him, the connection was of a different nature, intellectual, intense, and stripped of all pretense. They spoke the same artistic language, they shared the same hunger for freedom, and for a fleeting moment, it seemed they might rewrite the definition of love. But passion always demands a price. Like two flames drawn too close, they began to consume the very space they needed to survive. Theirs was not a sanctuary. It was a battlefield where neither could afford to lose themselves. And so, they let go. Not in bitterness, but with the painful clarity that some souls are meant only to touch, not to stay. Just when her heart had grown fragile from the wreckage of past loves, Jacqueline Bisset crossed paths with Alexander Godunov, a brilliant ballet prodigy whose tortured soul mirrored her own in haunting ways. He didn't enter her life gently. He stormed in like a final desperate blaze, one last ember of love she dared to believe might save her. Their romance was nothing short of cinematic, wild, intoxicating, and cruelly beautiful. But beneath the surface of that passionate union lay a chasm of unrest. Alexander, tormented by his own inner demons and the unbearable weight of expectation, often lost himself in storms of rage and despair. And Jacqueline, who longed not for grand gestures but for peace, a peace she had never known, found herself drowning in a love that felt more like a battle. They clung to each other with the desperation of two broken hearts, hoping the other could make them whole. But love, when it burns too hot, consumes, and theirs did. In the end, it was Jacqueline who had to walk away, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. She left quietly, with tears that no one saw, carrying yet another fracture within a heart already too splintered. It was not just a goodbye. It was a surrender to the truth that sometimes love, no matter how fierce, is not enough to heal what life has broken. And then, as if her heart had not yet given up on the longing for shelter after so many storms, Jacqueline dared to love once more. This time, it was Emin Boztepe, a Turkish-born martial artist, youthful, powerful, and instinctively protective. With him, Jacqueline felt a rare sense of safety, as if she could lean on his strength and for a moment forget the doubts etched deep into her soul. But age, cultural differences, and the unhealed wounds of the past quietly eroded their bond, until the romance dissolved like a hand that was never quite held tightly enough, slipping away before it could truly begin. And as the spotlight of her career slowly receded, like the sun slipping beneath the horizon at the close of day, Jacqueline quietly met Vincent Perez, a young French actor with eyes so deep they seemed to illuminate even the darkest corners of her soul. Together they wandered through the soft afternoons of Paris, gentle, unspoken, free of promises and untouched by titles. But like every love that came before, the difference in age and the quiet chasm between generations slowly carved a distance that neither could bridge. She did not cry when they parted ways, but in that silence lay the deepest sob of all, the quiet, aching breath of a woman who had grown used to loving without ever being able to hold on. After many deep relationships that never ended happily, Jacqueline still maintained a strong spirit and a heart full of love. Although she never walked down the aisle or had children, she showed her motherly love in her own way by being the godmother to Angelina Jolie, the daughter of her close friend Marceline Bertrand. Ever since Angelina was in her mother's womb, Jacqueline took on this sacred role and had a quiet but profound affection for her. Many years later, when presenting an award to Angelina, her eyes lit up with pride, not only as a colleague, but also as a spiritual mother, witnessing the young girl grow up and shine. She chose an independent life, not following the traditional family path, but always keeping in mind the image of a woman who loved and gave completely, quietly, but sincerely. Now, as Jacqueline Bisset quietly steps into her 80s, the silence within her seems more present than ever. Close friends have passed on. The passionate romances of youth have faded into distant echoes. Hollywood, once a dazzling world of lights, invitations, and acclaim, is now just a blurred memory, like a play whose curtain has long since fallen. In the soft hours of late afternoon, she often sits by the window, a book gently resting in her hands, her gaze drifting toward a horizon with no end, toward the unspoken questions that have taken up quiet residence in her heart. The eyes that once stirred millions now carry a soft sorrow, a wistful sadness that has no name, only a feeling that must be lived to be understood. Jacqueline once said that she believed in love, but not entirely in marriage, because you marry the bad habits. And she wasn't sure she could live with that for a lifetime. It sounded like a clever line, maybe even humorous, but behind it lay a tender fear, a fear of losing herself in love. And perhaps, in the stillness of long nights, she too has wondered, did she truly choose solitude, or did solitude choose her? The greatest tragedy of her life is not the absence of love, but the abundance of it. Love that came, that burned bright, but never stayed. So many moments of promise, so many eyes that once looked at her like she was their future, only to watch her walk away, not because she didn't love, but because she knew her worth and refused to sacrifice her soul for incomplete affection. It is a quiet kind of sadness, a woman once adored by the world, now falling asleep in silence, once celebrated on screens around the globe, now living within the still walls of an empty home, once possessing beauty, talent, and fame, but never the hand to hold through the end of life. And yet, within that loneliness, Jacqueline Bisset still stands tall, like a queen who has walked through battle. She wears her silence like a cloak, her regrets like invisible medals from wars only she remembers. She lives slowly, privately, but never without the quiet pride of a woman who has loved with her whole heart. The world sees her, radiant beauty, but few truly understand the cost. Behind the glowing image lies an untold story, a story of a heart that dared to love, dared to hurt, and in the end, dared to walk alone into the twilight. Jacqueline Bisset is not merely a talented actress. She is the embodiment of beauty, shaped by intellect, character, and compassion. Over a career spanning more than 6 decades, she has consistently chosen to live with integrity, a path not easily walked under the bright lights of Hollywood. Though she never married or had children of her own, Jacqueline's life has been anything but uneventful. On the contrary, she has poured her love into the world through quiet, deeply human acts. As the godmother of Angelina Jolie, appointed even before Jolie was born, Jacqueline has offered silent strength and guidance, not through grand declarations, but through the quiet example of a life lived with grace and authenticity. She also lovingly helped raise the children of her former partner, offering them the tender care of a mother's heart. In recent years, Jacqueline has devoted much of her time to causes close to her soul, funding cancer research, protecting children's rights, and advocating for animal welfare. To her, fame was never the goal. It was a tool, a platform to spread goodness. And she has used it quietly, steadily, never seeking attention, only impact. Her talent has earned her many accolades, including a Golden Globe Award, several Emmy nominations, and the prestigious French Legion of Honor, awarded for her immense cultural and artistic contributions. In 2022, she was honored at the Coronado Island Film Festival with the Cultural Icon Award, not only for her distinguished performances, but also for a life lived with unwavering principle and ceaseless dedication. And even now, nearing the age of 80, Jacqueline Bisset shows no signs of slowing down. In 2025, she will star in Long Shadows, a psychological western that marks a powerful return to the screen. Before that, her role in Lauren and Rose moved millions. A vivid reminder that while time may soften youth, it can never dim the radiance of a beautiful soul. Jacqueline Bisset is a quiet revolution. She proves that success does not require compromise, that a woman can be both strong and tender, that we can love deeply without letting that love define our worth, and above all, that we can be wholly ourselves, even in a world that constantly tries to mold us into someone else. Her life is a love letter to self-respect, a testament to the courage it takes to walk alone, to live slowly, to preserve one's identity in a world obsessed with concession. Jacqueline chose to walk away from lavish parties, fleeting applause, and noisy romances, to live in peace with intentional solitude and timeless values. That is what makes her a rare icon in Hollywood. Not a woman remembered for the men she loved, but for the woman she truly is. Today, Jacqueline Bisset is more than a cherished memory of cinema. She is proof that beauty can outlast time, that solitude is not weakness, and that within silence lies a resonant strength. Looking at her, we learn that there is power in stillness, triumph in consistency, and undeniable beauty in living truthfully, without needing to perform. If her story has ever touched you, as her roles have touched millions across the world, leave a tribute in the comments below. Jacqueline Bisset has never asked for attention, but she deserves to be celebrated. And if you believe her light still shines, click like to help others who still believe in stars that never fade see it once more.